Welcome, friends. Welcome back to the kitchen. Welcome back to Sunday morning and the Old Cookbook Show. Today, it's not strictly a cookbook. These were sent in by a viewer. Thank you very much. I didn't have any in my collection. I had seen them out there, and I've seen them both for recipes, cooking recipes, and also very popular in cocktail culture in the time period of the 1940s and 50s. Essentially what this is, and these are for the Rumford Baking Powder Company. Lily H. Wallace designed or is credited with being the person who came up with these recipes. Very prolific recipe writer in this time period. These were printed in the 1920s, 1926 and 1929. Lily Axworth was everywhere at that point, coming up with recipes for a bunch of different people. And when I say coming up with recipes, I guess we'll get into that in a little bit. Anyway, so it's not really a cookbook. What you do is you slide, there's a sleeve and a piece of card inside, and you slide it up and down, and you come to the recipe you want, and it has the ingredients on the sleeve, and then in this little window shows you the amounts. So today we're going to make, what are we going to make? We're going to make hot milk cake. Not necessarily something new, but I have need for a cake tomorrow, so we'll make one today, and Julie will take it with her to work tomorrow. So half a cup of milk. And so obviously, hot milk cake, we need to heat the milk, so that goes into a pot. Not much milk at all. The butter goes in there as well. Again, not much butter. So the butter will get melted into the milk, and that will scald. These recipe cards are kind of a great way when you look at them of showing that there really aren't too many ingredients used in baking. And for the most part, a slight change in ingredients, you change from being a cake to being a cookie kind of thing. Like it's really not that many changes away. One is not that many changes away from the other. And one of the things that I always kind of, struggle with in the comment section is people saying, oh, that cake you made today is exactly like a cake I saw in X book or by such and such, or, in the New York Times newspaper or one of those things. And I struggle with answering those questions because it's like, you have to realize that, in today, 2024, most of the people you see writing cookbooks, writing recipe columns, doing TV shows, doing YouTube, we're all building on recipes that already exist. We might be tweaking them and making little changes, but for the most part, especially for baking, they are broadly based on what was invented in the 1850s or 1860s. I kind of think of the 1860s as the dawn of modern baking. That's the point where baking powder and baking soda come into a common usage. That's the first point where chemical leavening comes into common usage. Prior to that, people were using whipped egg whites or yeast to leaven cakes. Very tiny proportion of people were using some sort of chemical leavening, but that was a very tiny proportion. You didn't see a lot of it. You see it more in historical fiction, keyword fiction, today, as people sort of kind of look backwards and say, oh, this is what they must have done, rather than what people actually did in that time period. Getting sidetracked. Okay, so the butter's melting into the milk. We're supposed to scald this. Let's move on. So in this mixing jug goes sugar and 2 eggs, 1 egg, 2 eggs, and give that a whisk. Okay, so this came to a boil. I'll turn that off. Just leave it there for now. Into here, I'm also supposed to put flavoring. Doesn't say what flavoring. It's up to you. Could be lemon, could be orange. I'm going to use vanilla. Almond would be really good. Sort of pick and choose. What have you got in your cupboard? What do you want to use? in that goes. Now we'll deal with the dry ingredients. So I've got flour. To that I'm adding salt and baking powder. And we'll give that a mix. Looks good. Okay, so the dry ingredients go in with the eggs, sugar, and flavoring. And in goes the hot milk and butter. So in early Canadian cookbooks, there's cakes like this where you're heating stuff in the pot, milk, water, some other things. And they're classified, they're called dump cakes in Canadian cookbooks, and you just dump everything into the pot. So instead of dumping everything into this mixing bowl, I would have just done everything in the pot. It's a one-pot cake, really. Mix it up and then put it into the cake tin. Now, on the back of this, on the back side, where the little windows are that tell you the instructions, there are basic instructions. There are the overarching method that applies to every recipe on this card, called General Rules. And you follow the general rules, and then any special rules appear in the window. And it also sort of tells you a little bit about length of time for cooking, depending on how thick your cake pan is. So we'll get our batter into the pan. The pan is greased and has a parchment disc in the bottom. So I'm going to say, based on the general rules that are written in here, this cake is going to take between 25 and 35 minutes, baked in a 350-degree oven. Hey, Jules.
Hey, Glenn. Hey, friends. We got white cake. I like white cake.
Hot milk.
Hot milk white cake.
Hot
Okay.
milk cake.
I was going to wonder what the twist was.
This is almost like it's a slide rule. It's essentially a slide rule.
Wow, it actually really reminds you that there's only so much in a recipe.
Yeah.
Like, this is it.
Yeah.
You've got sugar, milk, eggs, butter, flour, chocolate, some nuts, molasses, flavoring, salt, like brown sugar.
You change the proportions and you change some of the mixing order, and it becomes a cookie, and it becomes something else. It becomes a biscuit. It becomes something. There's a limited number of things that you're working with.
That's a very lovely piece of design.
It is.
Can I tell you how much I like this just as a tool? Clearly, it sat like this for a while.
Yes. So,
All right.
hot milk cakes have an incredible texture.
I was going to say that.
You know, there's something about the texture.
It's a piece of cake.
Almost. What's that one with all the egg whites? Mm-hmm. It's kind of got that loft. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Goes with fruit on it and stuff like that. Because it's got all the holes to have all the juice of the fresh strawberries to kind of like slip in there. That's really good.
Yeah. That's
a nice little cake.
That's a really good cake. And, you know, if I was making it just for Julie and I at home and not for you people watching at home, this would just be in a square glass baking dish, and we would just be cutting squares out of it as we walk through the kitchen. Wouldn't do anything fancy. It's not a cake that needs fancy, although you could make it fancy with some fruit compote on top or some diced fruit or something like that.
Little chocolate.
Yeah.
Little chocolate icing. Whatever makes you happy. Whatever makes you happy, do it your way.
So, these are fantastic. Thank you for sending them in. And it is really just is a reminder that there's only so many sort of variations that you can make in cooking because it's almost all the same. Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.